Welcome to Bonhill Geography. Today we'll be looking at the carbon cycle, a vital process that sustains life on Earth. We'll explore how carbon moves through different spheres of our planet: the atmosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere, and the lithosphere. Let's start with the biosphere. Here, plants, algae, and cyanobacteria perform photosynthesis. They absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and convert it into organic matter using sunlight. This process stores carbon in the biosphere. During photosynthesis, CO2, water, are converted into glucose and oxygen. This not only provides energy for the plants, but also releases oxygen into the atmosphere, which is essential for the survival of aerobic organisms. Where high rates of photosynthesis can occur, more glucose can be produced, which can then be used by the plant to build its structure. This sequesters more carbon. Next, we have respiration. All living organisms, including plants, animals, and microbes, release CO2 back to the atmosphere. This happens where they break down organic matter to release energy. In most forms, this is glucose. During respiration, glucose and oxygen are converted back into CO2 and water, releasing energy that organisms use for growth, reproduction, and other vital functions. This process is the reverse of photosynthesis and is crucial for maintaining the balance of CO2 in the atmosphere. Now for decomposition. When organisms die, decomposers like bacteria and fungi take over. This process is called decomposition, which breaks down organic matter, releasing CO2 and methane into the atmosphere and soil. Decomposers break down complex organic compounds into simpler substances, which are then released into the environment. This process recycles nutrients and ensures that carbon is returned to the atmosphere, continuing the cycle. Human activities can also play a role. We know that combustion of fossil fuels and biomass releases stored carbon as CO2 into the atmosphere, contributing to the carbon cycle. Fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas are formed from the remains of ancient plants and animals that were buried and subjected to high pressure and temperature over millions of years. When these fuels are burned for energy, the stored carbon is released as carbon dioxide, significantly increasing the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and contributing to global warming. The hydrosphere is another key player. CO2 is continuously exchanged between the atmosphere and the ocean. This ocean-atmosphere exchange involves CO2 dissolving in surface waters and being released back into the atmosphere. This is relatively balanced and called diffusion. The ocean can also act as a major carbon sink, absorbing about 1/4 of the CO2 emitted by human activities. CO2 dissolves in seawater and forms carbonic acid. This then dissociates into bicarbonate and carbonate. These ions are used by marine organisms to form calcium carbonate shells and skeletons. In the ocean, carbon is also stored long-term through carbon sequestration. This involves the burial and compression of organic matter over geological timescales, forming sedimentary rocks and fossil fuels. When marine organisms die, their remains sink to the ocean floor and become part of these sediments, which is where we find our fossils. Now, over millions of years, these sediments are buried and compressed, eventually forming sedimentary rocks like limestone, which will store carbon for very long periods of time until they are taken back into the mantle to then be melted and then released in a volcanic eruption. Another important process is the ocean carbon pump. This process deposits carbon on the seafloor due to the downwelling of carbon-rich water at higher latitudes, where temperatures are colder. This is because cold, dense water sinks and carries dissolved CO2 and organic carbon from the surface into the deep oceans. This downwelling helps sequester carbon in the deep ocean, where it can remain for hundreds to thousands of years, effectively removing it from the atmosphere and contributing to long-term carbon storage. It's typically thought that around 10% of ocean carbon is deposited on the seafloor this way, though, as we can imagine, it's a number that's very difficult to quantify. On land, weathering of rocks releases bicarbonate ions into rivers, which are then transported into the oceans. This process removes CO2 from the atmosphere and stores it in ocean sediments. Chemical weathering of silica and carbonate rocks also involves reactions with CO2 and water, forming these ions that are carried to the rivers carried by rivers to the ocean. This process not only removes the CO2, but also contributes to the formation of marine sediment. Finally, the lithosphere contributes through volcanic eruptions. Volcanic eruptions release CO2 stored in the Earth's mantle into the atmosphere, adding to the atmospheric carbon pool. When tectonic plates move and magma rises to the surface, it brings with it gases, including CO2 that have been trapped in the Earth's mantle for millions of years. These volcanic emissions are a natural source of atmospheric CO2 and play a role in the long-term carbon cycle. These processes, part of the fast and slow carbon cycles, are crucial for maintaining the balance of carbon on Earth. Understanding them helps us appreciate the delicate equilibrium that sustains life on our planet. Over the next 2 slides, you'll see summaries of all the information that has been discussed, so please pause there to take your notes. Thank you for watching Bonhill Geography. If you've enjoyed this video or just like the new end slide, please do consider giving the video a like and subscribe. See you next time.